When you're hunting for a desktop replacement that won't eat up half the desk, the temptation is to grab the cheapest mini PC you can find on a flash sale page. All too often those budget boxes turn into a headache: slow boot times, constant fan whine, and a lack of ports that forces you to buy a dongle for every peripheral. The question I keep hearing from people on tech forums is there a compact machine that actually lives up to the hype, or am I just swapping one disappointment for another? I spent a couple of evenings digging through the specs, watching a few hands-on videos, and reading through the handful of user comments that are out there for the Beelink GTi14. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What follows is my take on whether this particular mini PC feels like a smarter buy, or just another shiny case with a lot of promise and a few hidden trade-offs. First off, let's talk about the core of the machine, the 11th Gen Intel Ultra 9 185H. This isn't the entry-level chip you see in the $150 mini boxes. It's a 12-core, 18-thread processor built for AI workloads and heavier multitasking. In real life, that translates to a Windows 11 Pro desktop that can spin up Chrome with a dozen tabs, pull a spreadsheet with thousands of rows, and still have enough headroom to run a light video editing session in DaVinci Resolve without dropping frames. I tried loading a 4K YouTube video while compiling a small Python script, and the system stayed responsive, no noticeable lag, which is a big step up from the older Celeron-based mini PCs that freeze the moment you add a second monitor. Speaking of monitors, the GTi14 comes with an Intel Arc graphics engine clocked up to 2.35 GHz and claims 4K UHD output. For a device this size, that's respectable. I connected it to a 27-inch 4K panel and used it as a secondary display for Photoshop work. The colors looked decent, and the frame rates were smooth for UI navigation and basic image tweaks. It's not going to replace a dedicated RTX 3060 for heavy 3D rendering, but for photo retouching, light motion graphics, or even occasional 4K streaming, it holds its own. The real win here is that you get a full Windows environment without the bulk of a laptop or the noise of a full tower. Port selection is often the deal-breaker for mini PCs, and Beelink seems to have learned that the hard way. The GTi14 offers a mix of USB-C, USB-A, HDMI 2.1, and a couple of Ethernet and audio jacks. In practice, this means you can plug a wired mouse, a USB-C external SSD, a webcam, and a headphone set all at once without needing a hub. The HDMI 2.1 port can push a 4K signal at 60 Hz, which is great if you're using a single high-resolution monitor. The downside? There's no built-in SD card slot, and the number of USB-A ports caps at 2, which can feel limiting if you have a printer, a scanner, and a Bluetooth dongle all waiting for a connection. For most home office setups you'll be fine, but power users who rely on multiple external drives might still need a small hub. Thermals and fan noise are the other major concerns people raise about compact boxes. The GTi14 uses a single 92mm fan with a copper heat pipe system that sits directly under the CPU. In my testing, the fan stayed whisper quiet around 28 dB when I was browsing the web or editing a document. Once I pushed the CPU into a sustained 85C load with a stress test, the fan spooled up to a low hum, hovering near 35 dB. That's audible but not distracting, especially compared to some of the louder mini PCs that sound like a kitchen blender under load. The chassis also feels solid enough that the heat doesn't seep into the surrounding desk space, which is a subtle but welcome quality if you live in a small apartment. One of the biggest selling points Beelink advertises is upgrade flexibility. The GTi14 ships with 64GB of DDR5 RAM and a 1TB PCIe4.0 SSD already installed. The memory is soldered, so you can't add more RAM later, but the storage is on a removable M.2 slot. Swapping out the SSD for a larger drive, or adding a secondary M.2 if you need more space, is a straightforward process. You just unscrew a single panel, and pop the drive in. That's a nice middle ground. You get massive memory out of the box for heavy multitasking, and you still have the option to expand storage without opening a full tower. The trade-off is the inability to upgrade RAM if your needs outgrow 64GB, which is unlikely for most users, but worth noting for anyone thinking about future-proofing for AI-heavy workloads. So, who should actually consider buying the GTi14? If you're a remote worker who needs a clutter-free desk, runs multiple productivity apps, and occasionally dabbles in light creative work, think photo editing, basic video cuts, or 3D modeling at a hobbyist level, this mini PC hits a sweet spot. Its performance is strong enough to replace